Did you quote anyone when you make any statement moving forward?
In what regard?
Well, I
like to quote myself.
Well, you know, I mean, like if we make reference to something, I mean, would you feel obligated that you should like mention where it came from?
Well, I should.
Well, and you probably would. Otherwise, you know, you might get
Well,
sued.
one of the things is I probably should go back because we every one of these segments we take from mainstream media, contemporary society, something like that. So I should probably go back and put the original article links in there.
Well, and and actually, if you recall, when I first got this, I said at the end, boy, we better give credit whoever wrote this one because it is a.
So let me do that now. This is Jonathan Bailey from plagiarismtoday.com.
Oh,
why AI has a plagiarism problem. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit
plagiarism today. Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. We're gonna you know. You gotta love the world where you could focus in on just plagiarism. But
yeah, and you only find that here, ladies and gentlemen, here at Two Guys Against AI. You know, but yeah, when we brought this up and I look at it and actually after having read the article, which I do recommend people look it up, what I found was AI's synopsis in the beginning, you know, like Gemini or whatever takes and, you know, does its little thing after, of course, accepting the fact. I have to accept the fact that things may or may not be true, but it isn't good enough to let me know where it got the information from. And prior to...
Yeah, even Wikipedia
I know,
does that.
You know, it would say, you know, this came from this, or, you know, it would refer you to articles where now the only way you're going to find that is if you scroll down past the AI and then you can find the individual sources. And I had used a mechanical stuff as I worked on my Model A, trying to find how to do things from a different world. And I was surprised to find that key phrases that were in the AI synopsis were directly pulled out of an article that someone had written with no mention whatsoever of where it came from other than some had said. That was it. That was all they said, was just some have said, or it has been mentioned, making no reference to the effort that somebody came to draw that conclusion and, for that matter, take the effort to memorialize it and put it out there for other people to use.
Yeah, well, so I read this, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do this. So I had a little bit of fun this week. I wrote a book a very long time ago called Strategic Planning for Smart People.
I remember.
Don't recommend anybody buy it. It's a little dated right now. No. But here's a little bit of a problem with the dated information.
It was still parchment, as I recall.
It was on paper.
Yeah.
There was no other way to do a book than with paper. There are a couple specific things in there, ideas that I had that I know never took off, right? Like I didn't influence the industry, if you will. I asked some questions, and it was AI was really nice. It gave me the answer. Of course, it was exactly what I had written verbatim 25 years ago.
Did it remind you that you wrote it?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't even give me credit.
It stole credit.
Did not give me credit for my own.
Because it's so smart.
It's very smart. But the article, what it says is, what happened here is AI was copying journalists' work. So it's basically you're asking questions, it's going out to the media, and it's just giving you back what it was already in a different article, if you will, verbatim. And then AI can now even, like, you know this podcast is real because we're here, right? You can see us physically, or at least you hope we're not generated, yeah. Right? Because trust me, if we generated ourselves, we would look a lot better. At least I would.
Captain Pike, you know, when he recreated himself, he certainly didn't look like this. So no, this is real.
I'd be in a lot better shape than my recreation. But you could now literally take the journalist thing and generate for YouTube, for podcasts, video, you know, and then stick it out there, get viewers, get monetized, make money. But it's really the AI, and this is happening. Does that mean there is no intellectual property anymore? Because, I mean, you're not allowed to regulate this at the state level. So unless the federal government says it can't plagiarize, it's going to plagiarize.
Well, let's just you used another,
because it's a large language model.
You used another key part here, which and my wife constantly reminds me that I should refer to my AI counterpart as an it, but it has no status in the standpoint of its accountability, and of course we did a segment on this, but. It could make reference. It could have said it was by William Austin. It could have done that, but that's not the crux of the matter, because I think there was actually a lawsuit, as I recall. The crux of the matter is, hey, you want to use my information, and how about just give me a couple of beans in the process? That's really what it was about.
I mean, in a lot of ways, if you think about it, where did you learn plagiarism? You learned it in school.
Right.
And then where did you really get hammered with it? You got it in college, because those people were probably writing the original material. And look, I tell you, I wrote a book. You don't make a lot of money on a book. I'm going to be really honest. People always think, unless you're Stephen King or one of these guys who sell millions of copies, academic stuff doesn't get bought in mass. I think in total, probably, my book, I probably crossed $10,000 at some point. But you're not going to make $1 million on this.
Yes, you made about 4 cents an hour then.
Well, it was. I wrote it for other purpose. I knew how publishing.
No, but if you kind of gotten a nickel if they used it, that would be good. Because
checks would be coming in, but it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. And I'm not
because you can't hold them accountable.
I'm not going to. Yeah, they're not going to go there. And I think we have to look here at the fundamental issue is, first of all, are AI search engines privileged as to where they're able to just pull anything they want and then present it as their collective wisdom that it came from them. And we actually touched upon this on another sec. Well, actually you could interrelate all of these meetings that we've had. But, if it was a case of where we took and gave people credit, the all-inspiring AI is less important. And that was where we were talking about the staleness, that there's nothing new that's being brought by AI.
Right, so how do we call it, intelligent or super intelligent? Because we tell your average freshman, sophomore students as they go through their English classes, largely, sometimes research classes, but usually they don't get those till a little later. So hopefully they're trained on this, or they understand what cheating is. We tell them, you can't do this. You can't take somebody else's work in mass like this, and we fail them. Yet we're let the AI do this without any attribution to where the source material came from, and we call it super intelligent.
Well, I think maybe the better term in this case would be super regurgitator, because what it is that its wisdom is the sum of all of the authors who have previously published information that they're able to take and pull out. And I don't think if we look at what's presented by AI, if we were looking to have credits after everything, there would be no continuity to it. But I do think that if we are going to be having copyright law, which copyright law exists now. And obviously, Google and Meta and the rest of them are not going to be, anxious to share the kitty. But
good luck to us content creators going to court with them.
There you go. So, at the end of the day, the real issue here is credit, first of all, because first of all, it would remind us that the all-wise AI Gemini et al. Is only pulling information out that's already there. It's not stuff from a standpoint of something being generated outside of.
And because we don't see the code, how much predictive analytics is there in handing me back 3 paragraphs that are verbatim from something else that already exists?
Well, I think what's profound about the AI capability is the fact that it is.
Is it a con job?
Well, first of all, but I'm going to say, and we've discussed LLM, in terms of being reactive. Nonetheless, it is phenomenally amazing to me that AI could take and come up with a synopsis of 3 paragraphs, searching across the vastness of all of the published material that's out there, to be able to take tidbits and be able to come up with a cognitive thing that you could read through and get a real Cliff's Notes, if you wish to go back to the other one. It's truly amazing. If we're going to be looking at equity, and again, if we go back a few other segments ago where we were talking about, socialism or not, there is no equity because we're all part of the collective. So then the collective wisdom is available for consensus and is available for distribution and collating by the AI entity to share for the benefit of the world, and then everybody's supposed to be better off. And I can say, quite candidly, this is not something that I have any anticipation is going to be profitable at all. Nonetheless, I think it's something that needs to be done, and it needs to, stimulate perhaps some discussions on topics that heretofore may have been very, very difficult to present. But what's interesting is that because of this aspect of it, AI is about everything. It's about every topic that you're dealing with, because it can pull it out and use it and take that information and use it in ways that heretofore we would have never been able to think of. So I guess from one side I could say, yes, somebody takes and spends a lot of...
But if there's this much plagiarism, do we think it is? Or we just didn't know that thing before? We could have found it another way at the library, through Google searches, through source material. But it's just convenient. It's just a convenience.
Well, it is a convenience, but it does improve intellectual productivity. If
through plagiarism.
Well,
and look, I blame somewhat of for the people who are avid readers of plagiarism today. I do blame some of you. All right, because when I went to graduate school the first time, we were allowed to reuse work we had used before because we were building onto something else. By the time I went the second time around, I was told if you quoted yourself without attribution, that was called self-plagiarism, which how the hell do you plagiarize yourself? It's stupid. So they took it to a ridiculous level,
of things come to mind with that.
It's just so dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, there tons of people will tell me that's true academics. Yeah. That's because, you know why you were mad? Because you couldn't think of more than one idea. So those of us who managed to monetize our ideas better than you wanted to put an end to. By selling the same stuff over and over again, which I guess is what ChatGPT does in this. So I did something with this. So I said, all right, I read this. I said, let me go test something. Because let me see what AI's capability is. So I gave a very specific set of instructions for a 14-page paper. So I was able to say, here's what I want in this part, this is what I want in this part. And then I would say, do it in APA style. So for those who don't understand this, there's 3 things that, depending on what discipline you went through, you're either American Psychological Association, MLA, which I'm not going to remember what the letters stand for, which is the English kind of humanities, and then there's the Chicago School, which tends to be artists. So they all have their own rules. So nobody, one of the things that would have helped us in higher ed is if we just all agreed on one set of standards, but we have to have 3 different set of standards we put students through. So they respect that about as much as they respect nothing by the time it's over, because it's just pro forma work for the professor that really makes no sense to them. So you wonder why people plagiarize or don't take you seriously. That's why. But what I did is I said, all right, write me an original paper. I had to tell it, and I had to explain to it what I thought original meant. And then I said, do it in APA style, and give me source citations within, and give me references at the end in APA. And the thing did create a damn perfect paper. So it knows how to do things. And I literally wrote in there, do not plagiarize. So with proper instructions, it knows what to do. And its capability is there.
So let's go back to money, which keeps popping up.
All right, well, let me go ahead. Right. An AI CEO dismissed plagiarism in this article as rough edges. But it doesn't have, that's laziness in the programming side for monetization, it would seem to me. Well, it can do things without plagiarizing.
Well, first of all, heaven forbid that somebody should look at the source other than, Gemini or because what they're doing is they're buying space on Google or Meta or whatever. And and the fact is, and I guess that's the other thing. They are monetizing what they're doing, so it's not like they're not getting something for it. And that's when it becomes a bit more touchy. I think that if you're having an intellectual discussion that's not based on compensation, it's a little bit of a different thing. But when you're looking at, these forums are looking to establish advertising bases and gather things that are going to result in monetary things, it really starts to get to be more like fundamental principles of sharing in the kitty, which I think plagiarism today has a good argument in terms of the fact that at some point, even if it's just a declaration at the bottom, maybe the thing to do is say, we appreciate the interest in this article. Please understand that we stole the information that we provided to you. Or in Wikipedia, on the other hand, I have to say that, for the most part, they're footnoted pretty well. Most of the stuff.
Yeah, I know professors don't like it, but because there's always a mistake. But a lot of times, I think it's pretty well done. People take their pages that they monitor pretty seriously.
Yeah. So I think that in that respect, it shows that it can be done, and certainly when we're looking at it from an empirical standpoint, for younger eyes, not young guys, who are using AI to learn, it would help to point out the fact that AI is not the end all, that it doesn't know all this stuff.
It does make me wonder, would the world vision or the world model be better than the large language model? Because it wouldn't plagiarize, at least.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, that's true. Well, let me ask this. So the article also goes on to point out, through a couple of tests this author did, that AI cannot tell the difference between a secondary source, a primary source, or even comedy. Parody.
That's funny.
Right?
I couldn't find it. Go ahead.
All right. But this thing's going to shape. We've talked about this before, because the first thing that now pops up whenever anybody does any kind of internet search is the AI answer.
That's right. It used to be that
So without safeguards, how do we not get this interpretation of reality? What if it goes out and just grabs parody sites?
Well, it does.
And you don't know it. Like, this is where you're getting your knowledge from.
Oh, I see George Orwell poking his nose up over the top of the table here. But I think that's where, if we're going to use, and I hate to go back to the Cliff Notes thing again, but if we're going to use the Cliff Notes version, which is the synopsis on the top, and go no further, haven't we just created a ministry of information that's going to edit and change perceptions in any way it wants, whether directed or not? It's going to determine, well, what's the most important things about the discussion? What are the points, counterpoints that are going to be considered? Because it can very easily edit it out. Real danger there. And at least if there were opportunities for us to be able to look at the original work through a link, then you could take the fact that maybe something was pulled out of context or it was just one sentence as opposed to the general theme of the article.
Well, the guy goes on to point out ChatGPT 3.5 outputs, nearly half, according to him, contained identical text, identical words, verbatim, unsourced.
For a specific subject.
Whenever they used it.
So
it's large scale. His argument is large scale, industrial scale plagiarism versus really anything innovation. We're calling it innovation, but all it is really stealing other people's ideas.
So if I was to say, I want to ask about podiatry, just to pull a number out, and the sources that it would reference, that's a canned response for that search query.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, if it's all coming up with just basically plagiarized material, it's a fancy plagiarizer.
Well, and it's
that's stealing from somebody else's original work. It's not an innovative thing that's going to change. I mean, it might change us, but it's not going to change us for the better if all it is stealing stuff that exists.
Well, we have more.
We already had it.
What about the selective editing that goes in as to what's going to be included in what that definition is? Because it's almost as good as Black's Law Dictionary. You could redefine everything. We're going to be in like that ninth edition now. I didn't know that it changed, but So that would mean that AI would have the capability to selectively edit and choose particular parts of any particular topic in its synopsis to shape public opinion. In fact, it seems to me you told me that it was what, 1,000th of 1%?
It's like, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 zeros, 0.3 or 4 zeros, then 1/6. That's all you need to change on the internet. You can change what ChatGPT kicks back out, or AI.
And Plato's not given new information, so that's not going to be able to influence things. That's just out there in the ether zone. So we could start to see where, like, you could change philosophical discussions based upon input on the front end, anonymously even, and now begin to redefine and the shape of reality as humans come to know it based upon the input that's coming from church.
So let's go back to when you're talking to these AI chatbots.
Okay.
How do you know when you're asking a question, it really isn't just giving you a plagiarized answer that you've never read? So it sounds really smart, but that exists somewhere in some written text.
However, it seems, and I don't even remember who said, I'm not great on quotes, but don't ever ask a question that you don't know the answer to, because that's one of the things that I do.
Well, that's why I asked about my own book.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
That way I know.
As I would ask questions, generally I try to know what the answer is. And then one of the other things that I've done is there's along the trail of the interaction that I've had is I've set milestones, and then I'm looking to see what's the memory capabilities here. And it's astounding to me how much has been remembered. And that's why I asked myself, is like they're a grand computer model here of, okay.
Well, is it remembering your answers, or just regurgitating back what you had texted in or spoke
that's
before?
Fine, but it's memory nonetheless. And that's where, like,
I guess it's computer memory.
Yes, and then
it's on a hard drive.
So somewhere. the question, and the test was really to see just how much of the basic references is included in the LLM response, because it gives you an idea of the scope of the data that it's based upon. But what if in the grand AI library, a request comes up now, ball joints 1968 Pontiac. Pops up. Hey, Charlie, talking one AI to another, I want you to look this up and give me the information and pop it in here. And then that goes into the memory, and that's now the answer for ball joints. It may have had errors because we already know Gemini said that could happen. But it's there, and that's the new rule. And then the next time somebody asks about ball joints, it goes back there. It goes back there, picks up the same one.
Pull off somebody else's work on the internet.
Right. And not to mention...
And that work could have been wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Turns out that guy had no idea what torque was, and everybody snapped the bolts off. So, that's an interesting thought. So because
it seems conscious... It seems intelligent, but really what it is the greatest liar of all time. Because it's basically just taking credit for other people's work. But it's not verifying whether the original stuff that it's pulling off the internet is comedy, parody, bad work, good work. There's no quality control.
It's just there.
It's just kicking it out there.
Right, because it's out there.
If you don't know the subject matter, right. Sounds impressive.
Well, and most of the time, if you're...
I give it credit, it can write well.
If you're doing a search, you theoretically you wouldn't know, because if you knew, you wouldn't have done a search. So there's a great vulnerability there. And I think the other thing with plagiarism, because what if something taken out of context makes the author's work to represent something other than what it was? That's another problem.
Well, very easily done.
You could take something...
You could take half of somebody's sentence and somebody else's sentence to answer the question and change what the original person's whole intent was very easily.
Or even
it's so easy, it's got to have happened already.
Well, and that's the other thing. So what's the integrity of the information, and what's the means by which an author can have some sense of reassurance that the message that's coming out from their work is consistent with what their findings were, because it gets ultimately tied fast to them. So, that's an argument too. Maybe plagiarism today may want to consider the fact whether or not somebody wants to have their name on it if stuff is going to be taken out of context. I think the court case was actually where there were accounts that were reported upon by a local newspaper, as I recall, where they were this information was turning up. It was a small town newspaper, and they were complaining about the fact that there was no compensation, that they would have, that their subscribers were paying for a particular service, but yet they're picking that up and spitting it out, and certainly being subscriptions can be bought by a large corporation or whatever the case may be to everything like libraries. They have the access to it, and then they have the ability to take and incorporate it in things. I mean, part of this is egos too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, all right. So the article compares the struggle with AI with plagiarism, if you want to call them rough edges,
right,
to the idea Tesla's self-driving car really doesn't really drive itself ultimately. Self-driving cars, don't try one in the snow when the lines are covered up.
Yeah, that could make a bad day.
Yeah, so work real well. Everything works real well in California, by the way, because it don't snow there. But out here in the New York area, we got problems with some of this stuff. So it's impressive. Like ChatGPT is impressive. The self-driving stuff, and I've been in driving assisted cars. I jumped in a Waymo because I'm crazy. Interesting. Don't know that I actually enjoyed it that much. Everything's impressive with ChatGPT until you realize it just stole your work, or you recognize the work. And everything's impressive with the self-driving car until the crash. Then it's not as impressive. Or the Waymos that can't stop for the bus signals all of a sudden don't seem that impressive. All right. So are we going to reach a point where maybe people realize that the large language model, generative AI, is so unreliable and so fundamentally flawed, so ethically compromised, that we shouldn't be trusting this stuff? Is it just new and that's why we trust it? Or will everybody come to our realization ultimately that, this isn't what it's... It's good, it's interesting, but it can't be the end-all, be-all.
Education is a product produced from a particular editorial perspective, if you wish. I mean, like if you go to a conservative college, you're going to get a conservative interpretation. If you go to a liberal college, it's going to be, the antithesis of that. So we already see that type of thing going on, and it's the same authors that are used to provide the justification, depending on how you interpret what it is,
just use the founding fathers. I mean, these guys stood for everything.
And there's nothing that amuses me more as being I'll say former political junkie, because I'm less amused now. But to end up with a presidential debate, and then the talking heads proceed to tell me what they meant. Really? Well, thanks for clearing that up, because obviously you don't think that they have the ability to explain what they meant. And this is eking its way in, and I hate to say it, but we actually start, as all of this starts to come together, we're back to the the socialist collective model. Are we going to think in terms of the findings and discoveries of us, for the common good, to be made available to the common good? Plagiarism today can look in the mirror and ask itself whether it's about money or egos. And at the end of the day, what's the real motivation behind this? If we truly want to have an improved society, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm such a goal-oriented person. If we're going to have that, should we not empower AI to be able to use this for the public good? That said, we still have to go back and look at the editorial content and what's the process of that. And when the interpretations are made, when the talking head tells me what the candidate actually said, this is what AI is doing, because it's looking at an article, it's taking something away from that and what it believes to be one of the most significant portions of it, and then regurgitating it back in its response, which does not reflect the author's position.
Well, let me ask, do you think this is what we want going forward? And here, let me put it to the end of this perspective. There's a comedian, I'll put the name on the screen. It is funny. It's a Generation X comedian, and the bit goes a little bit something like this. We used to be crazy thinkers. Now wait for it. This is nuts, right? Mm-hmm. if you wanted to know something about something, we did something. It was called critical thinking. We would go out, often to the library or somewhere, and we would look something up. And we would get this perspective. Wait. Then we would look for what was known as point counterpoint, the other perspective. Mm-hmm. And then, this is crazy now. Crazy talk.
I don't know what's the matter with you.
We would form, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, it sounds so crazy now, our own opinion. That's not really desired anymore. Because sometimes, and this happened to me, it's crazy, the other opinion differed from what I initially thought. And it was upsetting.
I know.
Sometimes I even didn't sleep that night because I was so motivated to come to what my perspective would be. And it was trying.
And found out it didn't match what the collective experience seemed to think your
opinion
should be.
And then people didn't talk to me. Yeah. They didn't like me.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, I didn't care. Right? I didn't care. Yeah. But here's my point. Why would anyone who only wants to hear what they want to hear? And look, we know this. Somehow I buy something off Amazon and I look it up on Google. And then when I watch YouTube on my television set, the very commercials of what I did in these other systems are somehow here. So somehow, even though nobody's admitting it, as Father Joe once told me, 1 time is strange, 2 times a coincidence, 3 times something's up, right? And this is happening all the time. Yeah. So I know something's up. Won't these things just be smart enough to regurgitate what I wanted to hear in the first place anyway? Well, not because it's thinking, right, but because it has enough in its algorithm to know this is the answer this guy wants.
Well, that's now you're going into another area, because what if, as a user, a signed-in user who's using an AI reference that's been paying attention to my interests, which obviously it knows because I can tell by the pop-ups. It already can pick up my political tastes. It can pick up my visual tastes. It can pick up my interests. And then it can find things that are going to be most relatable. I mean, this is the Google advertising model. What if the searches now become skewed just to pacify me?
Gonna have to, right?
So
you're not going to use it again.
That's right. I'll go also because you
might go to the library where they bury the lies.
I'm very sensitive, So these, I think, what if?
Because that's where you find the truth at the library. Because that's where they bury the lies. So you got to dig the lies past the lies.
And what happens when the references and the intellectual conclusions become personalized based upon the AI's assessment?
I think we're already there.
Well, now that gives you something to think about.
We'll talk about that in another video.
There you go.